Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Bava Metzia. We are up to Perek Yud Mishnah Gimel. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbai, Eliyahu ben Burchai, Israelov, Chana ben Miriam, Sason ben Rain, Yoshua ben Shifra, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, and Avdi ben Chaim lechaim, v'derefua shelemav, Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Metoch Shach Cholei Yisrael, and Achnama Merav, Benyamin Or Tzion Chai ben Dvorah. The Mishnah returns to the case of a two-story house owned by two people that collapsed. If the owner of the upper story wants to rebuild his apartment, the owner of the ground floor is obligated to rebuild the ground floor to enable the upper floor to be rebuilt on top of it. When the two neighbors move in, it is understood that the owner of the ground floor apartment will do his part to ensure that the upper apartment can continue to exist. Therefore, he is required to rebuild the ground floor so that the upper floor can be rebuilt. The Mishnah discusses the law when the owner of the upper apartment wants to rebuild, but the owner of the ground floor does not. Habayit v'aliyah shel shnaim shenaflu, a two-story house belonging to two people collapsed. Amar ba'al aliyah le'ba'al habayit livnot, if the owner of the upper story told the owner of the ground floor to rebuild his apartment so that the upper story can be rebuilt on top of it, v'hu eno rotzeh livnot, but the ground floor's owner does not want to rebuild, the owner of the upper story may rebuild the ground floor himself, and live in it until the owner of the ground floor pays him for his building expenses. Once the owner of the ground floor pays for his apartment, the owner of the upper story leaves and rebuilds his own apartment. Since the owner of the ground floor is obligated to ensure that the upper story can be rebuilt, the owner of the upper apartment has the right to use the ground floor until its owner pays for his share of the construction. Another opinion, Rabbi Yehuda says, even in such a case, the owner of the upper story is nevertheless living in his friend's property, since he thereby receives monetary benefit from his friend. Although the owner of the upper story has the right to live on the ground floor, as soon as the ground floor owner pays for it, it is considered his retroactively from the time it was rebuilt, since he owns the right to whatever apartment is on the rebuilt ground floor. Therefore, the owner of the upper story will have been living in someone else's property without paying rent. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says he will have to pay the owner of the ground floor rent for the time he lives there, because anyone who receives monetary benefit from someone else's property must pay for that benefit. Rabbi Yehuda holds that whenever someone derives monetary benefit from another person's property, he must pay for that benefit, even if the other person lost nothing because of it, what we call zen and v'zelo chaser. Since the owner of the upper story benefits by living on the ground floor, because he does not have to rent another place to live, he must pay rent for living there, even though he did not cause its owner any loss, because its owner did not want to even rebuild it. The Tana Kama on the other hand holds that a person who benefits from someone else's property is obligated to pay for that benefit only if the other person suffered a loss as a result. If the second person suffered no loss, the first person does not have to pay for the benefit. Since the owner of the ground floor suffered no loss as a result of the owner living in his apartment, the owner of the upper story does not have to pay rent for living there. Rather, Rabbi Yehuda says, in order to avoid having to pay rent, the owner of the upper story should rebuild both the ground floor and the upper story, and build a roof over the upper story. He should then live in the lower apartment until the owner of the ground floor pays his expenses. Since he now has another apartment available to live in, the upper apartment, he does not gain any monetary benefit by living on the ground floor, and therefore does not have to pay rent for living there. Even though the upper apartment is rebuilt, he should live on the ground floor, because that will encourage the other owner to pay his share of the building expenses. And that is an abotai of Mishnah Gimel. Mishnah Dal discusses a different case where two properties, each owned by a different person, are situated one above the other. V'chen bet abad shu banui basela. Similarly, a chamber for an olive press was built in the rock of a mountain, like a cave. A person hollowed out a chamber in the side of a mountain and installed in it a press for squeezing oil from olives. V'gina achat al gabav. And a garden belonging to someone else was planted in the earth that covered the top of the chamber. V'nifchat. If part of the chamber's roof fell in, causing part of the garden to collapse, enough of the roof fell in that the garden can no longer be used as before, the owner of the press is required to repair the roof. Although these two people share the roof, it is expected that the owner of the olive press will be the one to repair the roof if it breaks, because without the roof, his olive press will be ruined by the rain. Since this is the standard expectation, if they wanted to arrange otherwise, they would have had to say so explicitly when they acquired their properties. If he does not want to do so, the owner of the garden may go down and plant his seeds below in the dirt floor of the chamber, until the owner of the olive press makes a new dome, a new roof for his olive press chamber on which the garden can be replanted. The Mishnah turns to other laws concerning property that fell down. If a person's property causes damage in the public domain, he must pay for that damage if it is the result of his negligence, but not if it was unavoidable. These laws are discussed more fully in Bava Kama chapter 3. The Mishnah discusses whether a person must pay for damage caused by a falling wall or tree that he owned. If someone's wall or tree fell into a public domain, a street for example, and caused damage, under ordinary circumstances he is not obligated to pay for the damages because it is an unavoidable accident. The Mishnah refers to a sturdy wall or tree that fell because of an earthquake or powerful storm. Since there was no reason to suspect that it would fall, its owner is not responsible for the damage it causes. If, however, the wall or tree was not sturdy, the owner is responsible if it falls. Now, the owner is exempt from damage that occurred as the wall or tree fell, if it hit somebody, for example, as well as damage that occurred right after the fall, if someone tripped over the rubble. However, if he does not clear away the rubble in a timely manner, he is responsible if someone is later hurt by it. In the next case, the court saw that the wall or tree was in danger of falling, and they warned the owner to take it down within a set amount of time. If the court gave him a set time, for example, 30 days, the court would usually give 30 days for their orders to be carried out. If they estimated that the wall or tree was in danger of falling sooner, they would have given the owner less time. But if the court gave him a set time to cut down the tree or demolish the wall, but before he could take it down, it fell and caused damage, the law is as follows. If it fell within the time set by the court, patur, the owner is not obligated to pay for damages. Since it was not expected that the tree or wall would fall so soon, its collapse is considered an accident. However, if it fell after the time set by the court had passed, Chayav is obligated to pay for any damages it caused because he was negligent by not taking it down when he was supposed to do so. And that is the Nabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.